There's a lot of buzz around the state about opportunity zones, but what exactly does that mean? What really is an opportunity zone?
So opportunity zones provide a pretty powerful suite of incentives for third-party investors, people with capital gains, to take those capital gains and invest them into certain designated low-income places. The way the incentives are stacked encourages those investors to be patient with their capital.
So how do these zones work, and how do investors get in on this deal? Investors with a capital gains event, which could be money they got from selling stock or property, have to pay taxes on that money. But if the investor chooses to invest it in an opportunity zone, they can kick those taxes down the road for about 6 years and then pay a reduced rate.
You get to defer paying a tax bill on the money that you have invested into one of these opportunity zones. If you invest your money well in an opportunity zone, let's say you put $1 million into a new business located here in downtown Birmingham in the opportunity zone, and 10 years down the road, that business is worth $10 million. You're not paying any capital gains tax at all on the $9 million you made on that investment. So on the real estate side, what kinds of stuff are we seeing get done? It's industrial projects, commercial projects where you've got multiple different retail centers. Third big asset class is housing. And most of the housing that we've seen so far has been workforce housing and up. So in other words, housing that's targeted somewhere between kind of 80 and 120% of area median incomes. So it's not housing for most low-income individuals. It's not housing for people that are, sort of high-income individuals. It's housing right there for sort of that missing middle. What OZs are doing is they provide enough of an incentive to a potential investor to justify a deal that would otherwise cash flow, but might not cash flow at a high enough level to sort of motivate that investor to come in and make the investment, right? So that's the problem with workforce housing. That's the problem. That's the reason it hasn't gotten done. And why would you invest in housing that isn't at the top of the market, right? Like, why would you invest in housing that's not paying you sort of the maximum level of rent? And the answer is there hasn't really been an answer. So, OZs provide enough of an incentive to sort of justify being able to reduce rents a little bit, providing a slightly smaller square foot framework for your residential rental units and go in a market with them.
Pretty cool, right? But there's some catches, of course. So if the investor buys a lot, they have to build something on it. If they buy a building, they have to substantially improve it. And if they invest in a business, then that business needs to do most of its work in an opportunity zone. Essentially, the investor has to have some sort of dog in the fight. They can't just throw their money at something and sit on it for 10 years. They have to leave it better than when they found it.
Both major big asset classes, real estate and operating businesses, are wide open for potential investors. Do your diligence and figure out what growth company might, go 10x on you. The incentive stack of OZs is such that if I make that $1 million investment, am patient, wait 10 years, provide follow-on growth capital, provide the business with help, help it grow, help it make connections, and get to a point where it is a $100 million company, I get to reap the reward of that by not paying capital gains tax on that appreciation. Because of the nature of the OZ program, check sizes, deal sizes tend to be larger projects, right? It tends to be, on the real estate side, things that are, $24 million projects like the American Life building. On the flip side, it doesn't need to be. So for example, a $500,000 project over in Avondale, it's renovation of the Woodlawn Theater to provide space for a nonprofit to teach music classes and a community theater or a community performance venue for the first time in decades in Woodlawn.
That's the power of this incentive. Officials say that it makes investors with money want to put their money in an area that needs help. And once that help pays off, the investor gets a nice benefit too.
It totally spans the gamut of things that you can do with OZs, and that's why this tool is so interesting. It's because it's so flexible. It's because it allows massive amounts of capital to move at scale from places like Chicago and New York and the Bay Area, but it's also a tool that can be just as effectively leveraged to get very small amounts of capital from willing investors who want to take a chance on a downtown Woodlawn. If a project has been surfaced, if a project is quality, if a project is going to matter to that North Star of community, there are multiple ways to get it done, and OZs is just one of many.